Hey, my brothers and sisters in Christ, it is Sharon, and I am back with you with how I study and understand my Bible. Now, you know my routine by now. I'm alone in the room. I'm prayed up, emptied out, and ready to receive what the Lord has in store for me to learn today. And my study comes out of the book of Romans, and it'll be Romans chapter 1, verses 1 through 32. Now, I'm going to start with something a little different. How I'm like an overview, a little introduction to Romans. And number one, I'll start with the authorship. As we can see in verses 1 through 7, that is Paul. Then number two, the date of the writing. And commentators have this date as 57 to 58 AD. And he wrote to the newly formed church in Rome. And so this church at this time is probably 10, 20 years old, maybe, plus or minus a few years. But and there's something about the Romans. Number one, Rome was a pagan nation. They worshiped and served every kind of god but God. I mean, they had Zeus, Athena, Diana, the sun god, the moon god, the fertility god. I mean, just all kind of gods. All of stuff made by hand, made by man's hand. Served all of that except the one and only true God. And then another thing is that they looked at the Christians as a misunderstood group. They saw them as they were confused. They thought they were confused, especially when it came to the Lord's Supper. They really thought the Christians had lost it. And then another thing, they thought they was just a subset of Judaism, which none of them, really identified the Christ. They also, not Christ, but Christians. They also thought the Christians were aloof, antisocial, anti-patriotic, and they just saw them as stubborn, downright stubborn, because the Christians would not worship or serve like the Romans did. They would only serve the one God. They wouldn't go do no sacrifices till there was none of that. They was not having any of that. But anyway, let's go ahead and be about God's business. And as you know, I love starting with observations. And my first observation is Paul is the author. Paul, he acknowledges Christ as the Son of God. And he professes the deity of Christ. And he is telling us that the sinners have no excuse, none whatsoever, of the choices they make, the things that they do. And that's just what he's telling me. And there's 39 sins listed there. Jesus took 39 stripes and then some. And so, starting with his salutation, which is actually he's greeting the Romans in verses 1 through 17 here. And like the first 7 verses, he's introducing himself, Paul. Then he talks about Jesus as being the Son of God, seed of David. He's the one that the prophets talk to. And that word seed there is the Greek word sperma, which refers to progeny, descendant, offspring. And we know Jesus is a descendant of David through his earthly mother, Mary. And we see that he declares him the Son of God. He says that. And then in verse 5, he says, through him we have received grace and apostleship for obedience of the faith among all nations for his name. And he was saying it's through Christ that we have grace. It is through Christ that we have faith. It is through him. Because without him, we can do nothing. Absolutely nothing. In verses 8 through 17 here, he's switching from, his salutation to, I am excited and anxious about being able to come and see and visit you one day, because he'd heard about the faithfulness of the Roman Church, and it had spread out worldwide. And when it says worldwide here, it's actually meaning, in that context, that region, that area over there where they were, which is Rome, Greek, or we would call Italy, Greek, Macedonia, those countries over there. That's what it is meaning when it says worldwide. And so then we have, let's see, in verses 11 through 13, where Paul, he expressed his plans to wanting to come to them, but he just wasn't quite ready or able to come to them. And it was not yet in God's plan for him to come to them as of yet. But he was just letting them know, I'm not ashamed of the gospel. He loved the gospel. He loved Jesus Christ. He was ready to share and spread the gospel with them. And then in verse 17, he's saying, for in it, which is the gospel, you see, the righteousness of God is revealed from faith to faith, and it is written that the just shall live by faith. Well, that phrase there, the righteousness of God, that phrase is only used in this book and in one other book, and that is Corinthians, 2 Corinthians 5:21. It's used in this book, the book of Romans, it's used 8 times. And this is, he's referring to the attributes of God. God's mercy, his grace, his love and kindness. That's just a few of the attributes. God got attributes that it would take, I guess you write an entire encyclopedia on it. But anyway, moving on, verses 18 through 32 here, his tone changes. He changes to, everybody is guilty. All is guilty and unrighteous here. And so, and he's really trying to point this out to them, and just telling them, he identifies them, people as ungodly and unrighteous because of the choices that they made, what they are choosing to do here. And he goes on to say in verse 19, where he said, but because we know that what may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. And he was saying that we all have a little piece of God in us. We all have got that little small voice that said, don't do that. That's a bad decision. Don't do that. Oh no, go over here and do this. Do we listen to that voice? No. Most of us do not. But he's saying you have a piece of God in you. God created you. Plain and simple. He created you. He breathed the breath of life in us. It's not the doctor slapping the baby on the behind or anything like that. God's breathing that breath of life in him. When God's breathing in you. He's doing that, not the doctor, not you yourself. But anyway, moving right on, he was saying the creation, nature. He is in all of that. And we can see him in the creation. We can see him in nature. I mean, look at the earth, hanging on nothing. Look at the oceans. They remain inside their boundaries where he told them, stay there, do not come past this. And they don't, unless you have a tsunami or something. But he was saying we have no excuse because God is all around us. He's all around. He's in everything. He's in our everyday life. He's there. He's there. You can look at the animals, the birds, the things that they do. They honor God. And God just told us in his word where he says, the heavens will proclaim my glory. Even when man won't, the heavens will. And the earth will proclaim his glory. Because what? The one he created, the one he wanted a relationship, won't do it. They want to do their own thing. And then that's where they got it. If man gets into trouble. And so he just said in verse 22 here where he says, professing to be wise, they became fools. And he just said, this is man. They don't want to live according to God's will. They want to do what they want, when they want, how they want it. They think they at Burger King. God said, no. I gave you a set of rules. I gave you a set of instructions, and you need to follow that. But man was like, we're going to do our own thing. We going to make the rules up ourselves. Things that make us feel good. That's what, that's what they want to do. They want that feel good type of things. And we know if we don't have any type of discipline or correction, we just go off the deep end. And that's what he's talking about here in the verses 18 on through 32. And he just goes on and he says, when you reject God, when you reject his will and his ways, you're opening yourself up to a debased mind, to a mind that's, you just open it up to Satan. And he fills your head with all of those type of thoughts and stuff. And guess what? When your mind is in control of you, you do what your mind tells you to do. You do what makes you feel good. You do what you want to do, when you want to do, how you want to do it. And he's saying this is not the way. We don't do that. So he goes on and he lists 39 sins in here. And Jesus took 39 stripes to cover all of these sins. And you think, okay, well, I'm not quite doing that. Well, it ain't no quite doing it. I'm almost you either do God's will or you don't. You don't have to do it. You do it with your whole heart. And the verse that really stands out to me is verse 32. This last verse that nobody that reads or they address. I don't know why, but it is, to me, I think it's one of the most important verses in this book where he says, and who knowing the righteous judgment of God, that those who practice such things, referring to these 39 sins, not only do the same, but also approve of those who practice them. He's saying, y'all just as guilty. You up here, holier than thou, your church folks, and go to church every Sunday, and you go, but you are, I approve, it's okay to go out here and gamble, beat your wife, your kids, abuse them, just all kind of abuse going on. And, making bad decisions for our health, making bad decisions just day after day in relationships. That's what this debased mindset. God said, I just release you to your own doing. And you are your own worst enemy. Put it that way. When you started doing what your mind tells you, it feels good, it makes me feel good, this is what I want, walking in God, walking in the will of God is not always easy. And our government, churches, politicians, whatever, all these groups that's telling you, oh, it's fine, you can do all these things. It's okay. And he said, no, you just as guilty for telling them it's okay. That's like telling a crackhead, it's okay for you to go and snort cocaine. It's okay for you to shoot up heroin. That is wrong. The things the churches do, cover-ups that they do, the politicians just as well, it's just not right. And you are just as guilty. So you need to take the book of Romans will be a self-check for yourself, and that's why it's my favorite book. But this ends my Bible study, and I hope you had an awesome and wonderful time as I did. And please click the like button and subscribe if you want, and by all means share. Be blessed and be safe.